All right, great. So, through the last class, we learned on HTML, the structure of a web page, what head is, what body is, and of course, that head is a metadata. It's a recap. All right, and within the head, we have the title tag that captures what is displayed on the browser's um, title on the website. Then we also mentioned the body is like the container that holds all the things that are visible on the browser. So uh, the images, the text, and all of that are captured within the body. Okay? And we did some use of tags. Again, we've said that anytime we open tag, there must be a close tag. So there are some tags that don't have open and close as separate tags. Or yep. So for such tags, or should I call them elements? Okay, for elements that don't have open and close. For such is the forward slash at the end of the tag that represent the open and close together. The same for image, for example, break, line break, for example, um, impute. So these are elements that have just a single, they don't have separate open and close tag. The open and close is just a single tag. So I will go on now for our discussion today. We'll be working with the project we worked with last week. All right. Our discussions today is more around CSS and styling of a web page. Okay, since we have been able to introduce elements on the page, elements like image, paragraph, which is text, and other things, list. Now I will look at how to style them effectively, how to style them effectively. The good thing of what we are learning now is, like I said in the very first class, is the basis from which frameworks are written. All right, there are people that will teach you web design and just teach you how to use Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a framework for CSS. It's a framework for style cascading sheet, cascading style sheet like this. It's also there are other ones like Tailwind. There are other ones like Chakra. Okay, so those libraries, most developers use them when they want to do the web page, all right, to style the pages. But what you are learning now is what those people that created those frameworks did, how to write from the scratch. Okay, and I believe it will make you a very full and all-round developer at the end of the day. Eventually, after knowing how everything is created, you can eventually learn how to use those frameworks later on. Okay, but you can actually decide that you are not interested in any frameworks. You want to write all your codes yourself. That's how deep I want us to learn most of this. Even the JavaScripting, some people use just jQuery, which Google provides, all right, and learn how to use jQuery. But we are going to go beyond that to learn the native JavaScript themselves. But for today, our class is on the cascading style sheet, CSS. Okay, so CSS is just the language that is used to style HTML documents. Okay, so things like the colors, the kind of fonts, all right, just how the page eventually, the layout is. That's where CSS comes in. Okay, how does the CSS work? There are actually three ways that you can use the CSS. Okay, the first is the inline CSS. Okay, I'll do an example of all of them. We'll work together. Like I said, it's a practical class. We'll be doing them with our existing projects, right? Inline CSS, the first guy we'll be looking at, there is internal CSS. Okay, it's different from inline. I would explain all of this with practicals. And there's an external CSS. Okay, so for the time being, I'll say what inline CSS is you writing the style on the tag. Okay, remember tag is just the less than angle and an element, then the greater than angle. Now you can actually style that element inside the tag there. All right, and I will tell us the downside of each of the case scenario. All right, the pros and cons. The internal CSS is a little bit different from the inline. Okay, for the internal CSS, you can create your style in the head section of the HTML. Remember, we said HTML comprises of the head and body. The head is the metadata. Remember, I said metadata, it holds things like title or something like style. Okay, it's in the head section. We'll do that. Then the third one is the external CSS. When you write your CSS entirely in a separate file, not on your HTML file. So you create a file, maybe call it style.css or whatever name, caleb.css, and write your style there, and you reference it on your web page. So quickly, with the examples we have here, we have a paragraph P, all right, and we have style color. So if I want to style, let's take one of H1. Okay, I want to change the color of the text on the website. See what we have currently, all right, as H1. Now I want to change the color and I want it to be at the center of the web page, not in one corner. All right, so I can come into H1. And though H1, like I explained the other time, the browser automatically has its own styling for it. Okay, but we can what they call it, superimpose whatever we want to write on it. So how does it start? You can see I started with style. Okay, so I started with style. So for inline CSS, what you just need to do is to type style equal to. So any element you want to style, you type style in there and you put the equal sign, then the parentheses. Okay, I can say for the various commands, or rather the various the various commands for the styles, you get to see them. I would also share them. I shared the website with us sometime. The last, was it the last class or the other two classes? So there are popular commands that you can give, like color. All right, the color fonts, we'll see some of them here eventually. Okay, on that, I will leave them for now. When we get down here, we'll look at them in detail. But for now, let me just give color. Let's say we want to change that text color. Let's call it color blue, or let's make it red. Okay, inline. And I ended it with a semicolon. So semicolon is needed because I might want to write other attributes of this style. All right, the first one can be color. The next one might be text align. All right, center. So everything I write for each particular command for the style or query for the style, I'm ending it with a semicolon. So take note of the structure. It starts with style and equal to, and there is parentheses. Now, inside the parentheses, I'm beginning to issue my commands, what I want it to look like. I've said color should be red. Then I close it with semicolon. Then I say text align, where it should be aligned, center. All right. So text align. Okay, can you see my screen? So that's the kind of transformations that CSS can do. All right. Other commands, we'll look at them later on at the bottom. Just wanted to show you what the inline styling looks like. So I get to write the style inside the element. Okay. If I create another H1 under, let me delete that style. Though it's an H1, but because it's an inline style, it doesn't affect this other H1 that I've written under. I'll say, let me call it second H1. All right. So if I refresh it, you will see that, say, so it's not carrying this red color or center. All right, because I wrote the style inline inside that particular element that I want to style is the only thing that will carry that. Okay, so that's one of the shortcomings of inline styling. So if I want to style the second one to look the same way, I then need to double effort to copy style and paste here too, and maybe format it the way I want to format it. Okay, so if I refresh, you see the other one is like it now. Okay, but it's not exactly very good when you have large projects because you don't want to. There's a concept for programming that I advise. It's called dry. Okay, dry, DRY. It means do not repeat yourself. For anything that should look the same, you should adopt a method of writing it once and being able to use it across different places. Okay, and I'll show us how you can achieve that either via internal styling or external styling. So we have seen what the inline style looks like. Now let's move to the internal styling. So for the internal styling, all you need to do is to come to this our head section. All right, I move it down. I write style. Okay, so it's style that the browser uses to recognize or interpret what I'm trying, the command I want it to do. Okay, but now I want to do something different. Let me first duplicate this H2 so that you can see what I mean as do not repeat yourself. Okay, now I can decide to style a particular element across all my entire website the way I want all of them to look the same. That's one of the beauty of developing a website, being able to categorize things that should look the same. All right. So if they should look the same, instead of me repeating one action multiple times because they look to look the same, I'll just do it in one place in this style head here. So let me style H2 element. Okay. My style H2, I just write H2, then um, bracket. This is a square bracket, open and close. Okay, so I can type in color. It's the same command like what I did in this inline, but this time let me use blue. Okay, then let me also use text align center. As I save this, if I refresh my page, most likely what will happen is every element that is H2 on my website will be formatted to this style that I've written. So I don't need to repeat it across all. So let me refresh and see. Can you see that? So I just did it in one place and it's happening across everywhere that has a H2. Okay, so that's a dry principle. Okay, dry is do not repeat yourself, like I said before. So this is what the internal CSS is like. It's written inside the head. Okay, it's written inside the head. Then there is another type of CSS. Okay, it's called the external. For that one, we need to create an external file, and that's the best practice for me. All right, because I want my code to be tidy. All right, I want all my styles to be in one file. So if I have anything about style as an issue, I just go to that particular file to style it instead of creating my styles inside my HTML pages. Okay, because what it means is you see this internal style now can only be applied on this page I am is index. We have an about us page. I can't reference that style that is on the index here. Okay, because it's existing on the image, except I copy it and go and paste it in about us. All right. But remember, like I said, that dry is a principle that is very good, a good practice for development. All right. So you don't want to repeat yourself. You just want to do it once and let it not only appear all through the page, but all through all the pages that you have. Okay. So let's confirm the about us, that the about us is not formatted. Oh, sorry, this is index. I think I have a page that links to about us here. Right. Yes. So you see, we can confirm the about us is still raw. It's not. formatted. So let me go back and create an H2 element in the about us, because what we want to do now is to see how I can do one style and across multiple pages. Let me turn it to H2. It could be anything. Don't mind that I'm using H2. It could be your H1 you want to style like that. It could even be paragraph you want to style across. It could be anything. All right, but let me use H2 um, across. Let me use H2 styling as a description. All right. So you can see that even if it's H2, if I open the About Us page, this is not styled how the home page H2 is styled. Okay, so that's the limitation of internal CSS. Again, let me take the three types of CSS again. Inline, which is the one written inside the element. Internal, which is the one written on the web page but in the head. Then external, which is the third one, written on a separate sheet. But the good thing is it can be referenced across all your websites. Okay, so for the external one, I like to properly arrange the structure, all right, the hierarchy of folders. Okay, if we can still recall that the website is just a combination of folders that hold files that I want to share on the internet. So if I want to create a CSS file, for some people, they can just create it anywhere in here directly. But I want to organize it more properly. So I want to put CSS as a folder first. All right, to create a folder in your VS Code, you'll see the plus new folder. You can go from file, you see new, okay, new file, then you save as a folder. Okay, but the shortest cut for you is just to click on this plus folder. And then now that I'm on the CSS, I'll leave my cursor on it. All right, and I click on new file. So we can call it Caleb style.css. That's the extension of every style stuff. Okay, so we have our file now. The next we want to do is exactly what we did on, let me just copy it and paste it. The H2 tag. All right, the style for H2, I'll just copy it and paste it here. Okay, but this time, let me make it green. Okay, I'll make all the H2 green. I'll go to the home page and, uh, okay, let me make this H3 so that I will not obstruct the one of H2. Let me take copy H3 from my home page and also put it on the about page so that the style can apply across all the pages. Okay, so our styling will turn into H3, green and text align center. Now, one thing we'll need to do is for the external, we need to reference it on a page, whichever page we want to call that sheet I just created. All right. So an example is I come to the about the index page. Inside the head, okay, I can paste the syntax is uh, uh less than sign, then link. Okay, link is like the keyword that the browser use. Then this attribute is the relationship to say, okay, this thing is a style sheet. Okay, so you know CSS is a style sheet, so it's telling you the type, the style sheet. Href, if you remember, href is usually the hyperlink to say, okay, this is what the style sheet I'm referencing. But in our case, the name of the style sheet is not style sheet, and it's not just located here. Since we have a folder that we have first called CSS, so we'll start it first with CSS slash, you see, my own system is auto completing. All right. For some, you can drag from, if you're using VS Code, you can actually drag from here all the way in. It will show that. Then let me go ahead to type it again. So we have CSS slash Caleb CSS. So we have referenced this external CSS that we created. All right. And that's all we need to do. If I refresh, I believe the H3 should carry it. If I want to also make it effective on the About Us, I'll copy it to the About Us page. I'll go to the head and paste it. The same thing. We are just referencing the style sheet we created. But you must get used to this syntax. It starts with link, then the type of file, the relationship of the linked file, then the link to the particular style file that you have created. All right, so let me save this and go to the browser to see what we have. You see, homepage has this. Let's come to About Us. About Us page has this. And we did that just in one place. We didn't, if you check H3 is not on About Us anything. There's no styling here that's showing H3. Same thing, there's no styling here, whether inline or internal, that's showing H3. So that's the advantage of external CSS. You code it on a separate file and you can replicate it across all the pages of your website. Okay, so is this three different types of styling? Is it clear now to us before we move on to um, some of the major styling properties, CSS properties? Okay, is this clear or you need clarity? You have questions or am I too fast? Or we can progress, yeah?
Since we can watch the video over again, let's progress because of time.
All right, perfect. Okay, so the CSS syntax, basically the rules, just like the things you see me type. Okay, the guy here, where we call it the selector, the guy where you saw me type H1 or H2. Okay, it's called the selector. While the the other one that is, should I call it the property? Okay, I don't know how else to explain the property, what the property is, but the thing by the left, which you want to assign a value to. Okay, the style by the left, which you want to assign value to, is the property. Why this is the value. So in this case, P is a selector, color, font size, they are properties of that very selector, which is an element. Then this is the value that you are giving to it. Okay. So let's take this now to say P. Let's copy this and paste in our external sheet. You will see how it will turn everything that's P on index and about us. It will change all of them to whatever this styling is. Our styling is to make it green, font size 16. So I've just pasted it on my style sheet. Let's refresh and see. You see that this is now green and the font size is 16. If I refresh this, you see this. So everything that's P on the web page will take that format. All right. Okay. So those are the syntaxes. Again, let me reiterate the syntax. This is a selector. Okay, this is the property and this is the value. So the common CSS properties that we have is for text, color, the size of the fonts, and the font family. Font family is just the type of font. Okay, we can use Arial, for example. If I come to my page here and say for P, any paragraph, I want the font family to be Arial. You will see you can just select from your system defaults are there. There are sometimes that you want to use the one on a server, but for now, let's work with whatever is on your system default. So if I save this, all the paragraph fonts will change from what you're seeing. Okay, all these fonts will change. This default is Times New Roman. So let me refresh it. You see that the font has changed. It's different from this one. Okay, because I've said every P should be styled with Arial. All right. So these are one of the most popular, um, some of the most popular um, CSS styling for elements, text elements specifically. So color, font size, font family. All right. So there are other ones like margin, padding, and border. Okay, let's also do that. Let's do that. Okay. For margin, as a page. Margin usually is the outer space, okay, on an element. Okay, so a space outside of an element. Let me cite an example. Or let me draw it so that we'll get to. I want to open Paint and see if I can share it alongside. But I also try to see if I can illustrate what margin is. Um, okay, so I'll share the screen again. Then Paint, Paint. Yeah. Okay. Can you see my paint now? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Let me get. So let's assume this is your laptop or your desktop screen. Then you have the area where your website is. Oh, sorry, it's loading. Okay, so let's say this is where your website starts. Let me get the arrow. Let me draw it. Pencil. All right. So if this is where your website starts, this is your laptop screen. The space between here and here is the margin. Okay. Sometimes you want to move this box maybe closer to the screen. All right. You can move the margin such that if you put margin 0, this edge will be touching this edge. And if you put margin minus, because margin allows for negative signs, numbers too, it can shift. Like you want your website to show only from this part of this element. Maybe this is an image. You don't want to show the full image. You just want a style where the image starts from here. The margin can shift this image that far that here would be sticking with this edge. So margin is the outside space, okay, of an element. Now there is padding. Padding on its own side, padding is the space inside an element. Okay, here, this is where padding works. All right. So if I'm typing into this very element, okay, let's call this a holder or something. I can put a padding to shift it far from this. All right. So padding is the space inside an element, while margin is the space outside the element. Okay. So if I'm working on margin, it doesn't affect the arrangement of anything inside of this element. If I'm working on margin, it's only just moving the full container to and fro. But if I'm working on padding, it affects everything inside this element, but it doesn't affect things outside the element. Right. So that's the major difference between margin and padding. Okay, so let's do margin, padding, and border. For border, I think the name it's already very clear. Let me look for something that we can apply border on. Okay, try the H1 on this styling. Let's call this border. I'm using inline style now. And like from my explanation, I believe we can replicate this across the other types of styling. It's just to copy what we have done. Okay. Uh, let's call this black. 1px solid black. Okay. So when using border, let me close that. You always close it with a semicolon. So if you are using border, you see there's a syntax. If you see a shoot out of my mouse, mm, You see somewhere syntax as written. If I move my mouse, it will leave. That's why I'm not moving my mouse. But if you see the kind of balloon menu out of where my mouse is, you'll be seeing shorthand property for setting border, width, style, and color. Right. The first thing in this border syntax is the width of the line. How thick do you want the border to be? Solid is saying let it be a straight line, like a direct line, not dotted or dashed. It's all joined together. So that's solid. Then color is the color of the border, what the border color should be. I can write this again, but not using border. I can write them individually to say, oh, border size, 1px. Okay. Border style, solid. Border color, black. I can write them separately. But since there is a command that can help me write all of them at once, that's why I'm using this. So if I use this as border, let's see what the border would be like. I think that's on the index. Am I correct? All right. Yes, that's right. So I think I also made for H1, there can be border around should I call it text? All right, border really works with containers. Yes, I think that's the right term. Borders work with containers. Let me introduce one other element. They call div. Some people call it div. Div. It's just a container, it's a holder. Okay. So if have a div or div, I write a text inside. I can put H1 inside the div or div and type uh, my H1 surrounded by border. Okay. Now I want to write this inline style, not on the H1, because I want to put a border. I'll write it on the div or div, whatever we call it. All right. So I'll make it border 1px solid and black. Right. So let me save and refresh. Uh, okay. So you can see it at the top. All right. So if I want to make the div maybe a little bit smaller. I don't want it to be this big. I don't want it to be full width. Okay. I can also give that command to say, okay, width. Let's make it either auto, but let's give it a 50%. Auto means take the size of the container. Okay, if I want to make the width auto, it means it should take the size of the container. All right, so as given it 50%, it takes half of the screen. So this is how border works. You can make the border thicker if you like, from 1 to 5. Okay, I can refresh it to see is a thicker border. All right, all of these are some of the things that we see with styling. Okay, then margin. Sorry, I've talked about margin and padding. Background, either background colors or background images. Okay, so sometimes, okay, let me first explain background color. Background color is much more straightforward. You can just put a background color and let me put it on this there. Background color. Uh, let's call it this color, this aquamarine. So if I refresh it, you see the color here now. So let me use this to also demonstrate what padding is and what margin is. So take note of this display. You can see this my in the container is touching this edge, but I don't want it to touch the edge. So what I just need to do is to add padding. Remember, padding is the space inside the element. So if I don't want it to touch this edge anymore, I just need to pad it. Okay. So inside the div, let me put padding, let's say 20 pixels, 10 pixels, 10 px. You can use 20, you can use anything you like, Sha. Okay, you see. Now, because I just did padding, it's going to pad the top, the right, the bottom, and the left. Then I can decide to pad only just the left. Okay. For that, I'll instead of writing padding, I'll do padding left. Okay, so it doesn't pad any other place, it's just the left that it pads. All right. If you want to pad right, padding right, pad top alone, padding top, pad bottom alone, padding bottom. You can see that it removed the padding on the other side, so it just pads only here. Now that's what padding does. So let's also use this to test run margin. Okay, so for the margin, if I put a margin of let's say 20 pixels, take note and see how it will move this full triangle. It will move it, not the content.